So the image you're looking at appears to be a crater caused by the detonation of a Russian RS-28 Sarmat missile that likely exploded in the silo. Now the Sarmat, which is also called the Satan II, is Russia's latest heavy intercontinental ballistic missile, and it's designed to replace the aging RS-36M Voyevoda missiles. So it's pretty much a key component of Russia's future strategic nuclear modernization program. Now, it's being reported that this is a complete catastrophic failure of both the missile and the destruction of the silo. And it seems like this explosion happened during pre-launch procedures such as fueling or some other launch preparation situation. A big reason why experts think this explosion was during pre-launch procedures was because there's no Cobra ball activity prior to the explosion. Cobra 28 was launched from Elmendorf in Alaska, but it wasn't to monitor any kind of launch. It was heading back to Nebraska where it's based. So it seems like the aircraft was in Alaska preparing to monitor a potential Russian Sarmat launch, but that launch never occurred. So the aircraft just went back home. And what is Cobra Ball, you ask? Well, it's a highly specialized RC-135S reconnaissance aircraft, and they're called Cobra Balls. They are operated by the United States Air Force, and its primary mission is to collect and measure signature intelligence on ballistic missile activity. So how would the U.S. know when to launch their Cobra Ball aircraft to conduct reconnaissance missions of Russian ballistic missile tests? Well, because Russia tells us exactly the date and time and the type of tests they're going to be conducting, so there is no confusion that it might be an actual real nuclear launch and we accidentally start a nuclear war. This is a courtesy that the US provides Russia as well. So interestingly, these tests are data collection points for both countries. And since this is Russia's newest missile, it can be assumed that we would have had a Cobra Ball aircraft in the air so that we could collect data on that. But since there was none actually in the air on that day, it's assumed that the missile was likely destroyed during pre-launch activity. Now, in the off chance the US isn't told by Russia that missile tests are being conducted, we still have satellite capability to monitor Russian missile sites to see if there's any kind of increased activity or movements on the ground that would warrant activation of our intelligence gathering capabilities. Now, in addition, 2 US satellites traversed the area after the explosion, the first being the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration 20 satellite, which you see here, and the second was the Suomi Polar Orbiting Operational Environmental Satellite. Both have the capacity to detect fires on the ground, and that is definitely what they detected over the launch site. Now, Planet Labs imagery satellites flew over after the fires were extinguished and took a photo of the crater you see right here. Again, it's a catastrophic loss. So the last and only time the Sarmat was successfully launched was in April 20th of 2022, and since then 4 separate Sarmats have failed in some capacity, whether on launch or during pre-launch procedures. And what you're looking at right now is that last successful launch by the Russians. Now, it's worth noting that even successful nations have issues with new missile development with considerable failures. We saw SpaceX fail time and time again, and they're pretty successful now. I mean, the UK lost 2 missiles that were fired off Vanguard-class submarines, but the difference here is Russia uses their Sarmats as a constant current threat and have declared them to be on a combat duty status. And I'm sorry, Russia, but a 20% success rate is not combat ready, no matter how many times your propaganda arm claims them to be. Plus, those UK missiles that failed, they didn't actually destroy the Vanguard subs that they were fired from, whereas this Sarmat destroyed the silo that it was supposed to be launched from. These repeated failures of Russia's Sarmat missiles are a significant blow to Moscow's ambitions to modernize its nuclear arsenal and its military prowess across the globe. These setbacks expose glaring weaknesses in Russia's technological capabilities and their defense industry. It undermines their credibility on the global stage. The delays and the technical issues plaguing the Sarmat program could force Russia to rely on outdated systems, further widening the gap between Russia and Western military capabilities. This technological shift absolutely favors the West's, NATO's, the US, whatever you want to call it, their strategic position, and it allows NATO and its allies to strengthen their defensive posture against Russia with greater confidence, and Russia just continues to grapple with its faltering modernization efforts. The concern here, though, is in their continued failures, are they going to become more and more desperate, thus skipping some of the necessary precautions, or even becoming more of that cornered animal situation where they feel their capability is so far removed from the prowess of the West and the United States that they need to lash out. I don't think that is the case, but it is something that we will have to keep an eye on.